If you want a deck that makes Charizard players sweat harder than Trust Your Pilot at a foot convention, look no further than Chien-Pao EX. Probably my favorite thing about the free Chien-Pao deck given away to all Pokemon TCG Live players until March 2025 is just how good it is. Aside from a bit of bloat, you can beat top tier decks. I know, because when I was testing, I managed to beat some top tier decks. Let me quickly go over the free deck list and why it's so great. Compared to the best Chien-Pao decks out there, pretty much everything you need is included. There's 3 Chien-Pao EX, a 3/1/3 Baxcalibur line, a 2/2 Bibarel line, 4 Irida, 4 Superior Energy Retrieval, a Radiant Greninja, a Manaphy, and more. Aside from the 1 Morty's Conviction and 2 Lost Vacuum, there's very few wasted cards. Honestly, if you took the free deck on its own without any changes onto the ranked ladder, you would probably make it to Ultra League. To optimize the free Chien-Pao deck and remove some of that bloat, it's very simple. You don't need 2 Lost Vacuum, cut it down to 1. You don't really even need 1, but it's good to have a copy as a way to bump a tool card like Hero's Tape or Ancient Booster. Then add a single copy of Canceling Cologne. It's an uncommon trainer, so it'll cost just 100 credits. This way you can bring up a Manaphy, remove its ability, and use Radiant Greninja to hit 2 bench Pokemon. In that same vein, get a Counter Catcher. This is an item-based way to bring up a bench Pokemon, provided you're behind on prizes. And if you have it, throw in a Prime Catcher as well. Depending on when you're playing PTCGO, you may have received it free at Tier 6 of the Temporal Forces Battle Pass, which ends on May 22nd. Prime Catcher is by far the best A-Spec for Chien-Pao. It's an item, meaning it's searchable with Irida, and it allows you to bring up any Pokemon on your opponent's bench while also switching your active. I also threw in a copy of PokéStop since the deck is lacking a stadium and there's so many items, as well as a 3rd Super Rod to make recycling Pokemon and energy even easier. Both of these cards are free, so for a total of 200 credits, this is how you can quickly improve the default Chien-Pao deck. If you do have Prime Catcher though, cut a 3rd Super Rod or the PokéStop to make room for it. If you want to make Chien-Pao Tier 1, it's surprisingly easy. Just add 1 copy of Iron Hands EX, which costs 600 credits, as well as 1 Lightning Energy. While Chien-Pao can take big KOs against 2 prizers and Radiant Greninja can hit bench Pokemon, if your opponent is using a single prize deck and have a Manaphy in play, that's where Iron Hands EX comes in. With Amp You Very Much, you deal 120 damage and take an extra prize card if it's a knockout. So those weak single prizers now give up 2 prizes. Or you can one-shot a Lugia V or Lumineon V or Squawkabilly EX for 3 prizes thanks to weakness. Just keep in mind that you'll never be able to use Arm Press, as there's only 1 Lightning Energy in the deck, not 2. Then there's Prime Catcher. The best A-Spec for Chien-Pao, it's 600 credits to craft, though you can get that free copy from the Battle Pass. And that's really it when it comes to major changes with Chien-Pao EX. Yeah, you also want to add an Iron Bundle to force your opponent to switch their active, a Heavy Ball in case you have rough prizes, a Counter Catcher, and a Canceling Cologne, but those are just 100 credits each. Everything else is free for the entirety of 2024. In total, you only need to spend 1,600 credits to make Chien-Pao good enough to reach Master League. Yeah, it's insane how good the free version is and how cheap it is to make it Tier 1. And that 1,600 credit total is assuming you don't already have Prime Catcher. If you do, it's just 1,000 credits. And since you get nearly 3,000 credits from Tier 0 of every Battle Pass, it's by far the most economical free deck for every new player to upgrade. But like all decks, there are some drawbacks, namely Baxcalibur. Without it, the deck doesn't really function. Only playing 2 copies might seem risky due to prizing, but since you only need 1 to use it to its full effect, and given how easy it is to find with Irida and Ultra Ball, it's worth the risk. And with 3 Super Rod, recycling any lost ones isn't a problem. If you do prize both at the start of the game though, just concede. Anyways, the badness. If you only get 1 Frigibax down early, your opponent can just knock it out, leaving you to find another one as quickly as possible. Sure, you can manually attach to Chien-Pao twice to attack, but you're maxing out at 120 and then you don't have a follow-up. So ensuring you don't get left without a Frigibax on the field is imperative. You also have to be aware of cards like De-Evolution and Airy. De-Evolution puts your Baxcalibur all the way back down to a Frigibax. If you've been careless with your Rare Candy, they can leave you with some naked, useless Frigibax. Or if you clutch those Rare Candy in your hand, they can play Airy and discard whichever ones you have. Airy's also a problem when it comes to discarding your Superior Energy Retrieval, which is why some decks have begun playing Silene to get them back, but Silene definitely isn't a beginner-friendly card, so ignore it for now. With all that Houndoom and gloom out of the way, how exactly do you play Chien-Pao EX? For starters, going second is typically a good idea. Between 4 Buddy-Buddy Poffin, 4 Nest Ball, and 4 Ultra Ball, going first isn't horrible. You just want to increase your chances of having 2 Frigibax down turn 1, and choosing to go first makes that more difficult. Alright, so you've decided to go second. Best case scenario, you're able to play Irida as your supporter. This lets you grab a water Pokemon and an item. Most likely that item will be Buddy-Buddy Poffin, so you can get 2 Frigibax or a Frigibax and a Bidoof depending on how things are going. No matter what though, ensure you have at least 1 Frigibax down at the end of turn 1. Then, if you can, and you don't think it'll be knocked out, get a Chien-Pao EX in the active. This way you can use its ability, Shiver Me Timbers, to pull 2 water energy out of your deck. Then you can use those water energy either as Ultra Ball fodder or to discard with Radiant Greninja's ability, which draws you 2 cards. Don't worry too much about discarding your water energy early because there's 4 superior energy retrieval and 3 super rod to get them back. On your next turn, use Irida again, this time grabbing Baxcalibur and Rare Candy. From there, it's all about taking the best knockouts. Since Chien-Pao can search for energy, accelerating it from hand with Baxcalibur won't be an issue early in the game. And late in the game, that's where Super Rod and Superior Energy Retrieval become so important, as they can recycle any discarded energy. Unfortunately, you will have to do math with this deck. Chien-Pao deals 60 damage for each water energy discarded from your Pokemon in play. So 4 energy is 240, 5 energy is 300, and 6 energy is all you need to do 360 damage in one shot of Charizard EX. Chien-Pao really is crazy with how much damage it can deal. A 2-2 Bibarel line is also extremely important to Chien-Pao. Being able to refill your hand to 5 prevents you from getting bodied by Iono, and it also pairs well with Baxcalibur, which empties your hand of all the water energy. Getting Baxcalibur up and running is still far more important than Bibarel, but playing with your Beaver makes life a lot easier. I also need to take a second to talk about Cypher Maniac's code breaking. This is a high skill card, so I won't blame you if you remove it and just go with more copies of Iono. When you play Cypher Maniac, you stack any 2 cards on top of your deck. This essentially makes it a more flexible Irida. However, you need to draw those 2 cards. That's where Radiant Greninja and Bibarel come in. So long as you have a water energy in hand, you can Cypher Maniac 2 cards you need on top of your deck, discard that energy with Greninja, and draw into them. Similarly, if you have a Bibarel in play and 3 or less cards in hand, Cypher Maniac whatever you need, then just draw into them with Bibarel's ability. You will have to be familiar with Chien-Pao to know what to get with Cypher Maniac. It'll likely be Rare Candy and Baxcalibur turn 2, or Superior Energy Retrieval and Super Rod later on, but it's extremely powerful when played correctly. If you have the knowledge of Foresight, the only matchup you always want to go first in is Charizard. The reason Chien-Pao is such a problem for Charizard comes down to a few things. For starters, Radiant Greninja. If you go first and they can't get a Manaphy down, you're threatening a potential double Charmander KO on your second turn, leaving them scrambling like an Execute. Then there's Chien-Pao itself. Not only is it a basic that can one-shot a Charizard EX, if you haven't taken 2 prizes yet, Charizard doesn't have the power to knock it out. Yes, they can attach a maximum belt to Charizard and KO Chien-Pao, which is a big problem, but it is their A-spec. So if you see them running a copy of Prime Catcher or Hero's Cape, you'll know maximum belt isn't in their deck and can breathe a sigh of relief. Another thing to keep in mind, if you've taken a single prize card, they can attach a Defiance Band or Vitality Band to Charizard and deal enough damage to one-shot Chien-Pao. So unless you know for a fact that they're playing maximum belt, my advice is to only take 2 prize KOs against Charizard. Taking an early KO of a Pidgey or a Charmander might make you feel better than getting your toes licked by a Lickitung, but it could ultimately end up costing you the game. If you do take a single prize KO though, you'll have to use Strategery and force them to take a single prize KO at some point in the game, meaning that limiting the 2 prize Pokemon on your side of the field is super necessary. I know that last little bit might be confusing to new players, and that's because it is. Basically, I'm not saying Charizard is an auto win, I'm just saying that Chien-Pao has a good matchup against it, though there are some nuances you'll have to learn the more familiar you become with the deck. And learning those nuances will likely come as a result of several heartbreaking losses. When Twilight Masquerade releases on May 23rd, there's a chance that none of the new cards make their way into Chien-Pao. It's just so good already that any changes might do more harm than good. If you want to try something out though, there's the Water Ogre Pawn EX. It does 100 damage and can snipe 120 to a bench Pokemon if you put the energy back into your deck. To me, it seems like a worse Radiant Greninja because it gives up 2 prizes and doesn't have an ability, but it's a thing. And then there's Jamming Tower. This shuts off all Pokemon tool card effects. Chien-Pao doesn't play any tools, and a lot of decks out there have HP modifiers like Bravery Charm, Ancient Booster, and Hero's Cape. And Charizard can play that Maximum Belt to screw you over. Jamming Tower makes them all useless. Blood Moon Ursaluna EX, meanwhile, is a great card, dealing 240 damage for as little as 0 energy, but I'm not sure it fits in Chien-Pao. And the Skin Flute isn't bad, able to potentially give Radiant Greninja some targets, but it's too unreliable to commit a deck slot to. In terms of ace specs, Unfair Stamp is definitely something to be aware of. I just think Prime Catcher is better overall. Not only is the free Chien-Pao EX deck more amazing than I gave it credit for, but upgrading it costs 1600 credits or less. While there are some definite weaknesses your opponent can exploit, namely knocking out a lone Frigibax or Baxcalibur, the power is undeniable and I highly recommend it to any new player. If you have any questions about Chien-Pao or Pokemon TCG Live, or if you want to lodge a formal complaint that we have an iron hands but not an iron feet, use the comments below.